I'm just going to come out and say it. Social media is the end of critical thinking. And I don't know if I actually believe that. I'm just kind of being a little controversial here at the beginning of the stream. Today I've got a TikTok philosopher. His name is Paul. Let me clear my throat here. Paul, and I'm just going to attempt it, okay? Because I don't know if this is actually how to pronounce it. Blashko.
That's right. Yeah, you nailed it.
Wow. Wow. Nice. Yeah, it's a weird name, kind of like mine, Bertuzzi. Like when you first see that, you don't really know how to pronounce it. But you're a TikTok philosopher. Tell me about that.
Yeah, good. So this is a fairly recent thing for me, honestly. I just started TikToking maybe like a month and a half ago. And I did it because, there's something really appealing about the form to me. I teach a big class here at Notre Dame called God and the Good Life. And really, one of the sort of animating principles of that class is to try to make philosophy accessible and relevant. And so, finding a medium that challenges you to creatively present a bunch of content in as quick, a sort of fashion as you can, just appealed to me. And I thought, this is really funny. I think we could do this. And so, yeah, just started making them, about 6 weeks ago.
So let me just say this really quickly. I know that a lot of you are watching this right now, and you may be noticing some lag or choppiness in the video and stuff. That's what we were dealing with right before we went live. So good news is that we can still hear him clearly. I think at least that's been my experience so far, is that we can hear him even though the video looks a little bit choppy. So apologies for that, but if you just listen to it, you should be good to go. So Paul, first of all, you look like one of the philosopher like statues that you see from like Aristotle or Plato. Is that intentional?
Oh gosh, can you repeat that, Cameron? You cut out a crucial moment.
So you look like just the way that you look is like one of these old time like philosopher statues that you see of like Aristotle or Plato. Is any of that intentional? Can you hear me?
There we go. I think I got the question that I
Okay,
look like an old time philosopher. I look like
like
Plato or
Aristotle or
Marcus
Plato. Yeah,
Aurelius. Is that right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not intentional. I didn't mean when I started growing out my beard kind of at the end of COVID to look like a philosopher, like sort of the Greco-Roman like style philosopher. But as it sort of came in and like as the curls came back, a lot of people started mentioning this on TikTok, and I kind of liked it, and I thought like, yeah, let's just go with it.
Yeah, no, it definitely like, makes you look respectable as a philosopher. It's a good look. It's a good look. Well, I feel ashamed about this because like, first of all, I haven't watched all of your TikToks. I think I've only watched like one or two, but I really liked them. I liked your the way that you presented these ideas to me. Like, so YouTube. I know that you're getting into YouTube lately. And by the way, if you want to subscribe to his, do you even subscribe to a TikTok? I don't know anything about. I don't know the first thing about TikTok. But you do have a YouTube channel, and I've got all of your stuff linked in the description of this video. So go check his stuff out. It's really really good. But the one thing that I wanted to say was that like it does take a specific kind of skill to be able to distill philosophy down to a minute or like 2 minutes. And I think you've kind of got an act for that. So do you find that just sort of comes naturally for you?
Yeah, good. Sorry. Let me know if I'm interrupting you at any point, Cameron. We're like working with this on my end, but yeah, I got the question here. So good. Yeah. So distilling philosophy, it is a skill. It's a knack. Does it come naturally? I would say no. It's a very difficult thing. I think a difficult thing to do. I think for me, the biggest hurdle was actually getting rid of what I call expert brain. So if you go, and look at my, YouTube channel, I got a couple interviews. I call it expert brain. I call this series expert brain. And the way that I think about it is something like this. Once somebody has gone so deeply into any sort of area of knowledge, it could be philosophy, it could be biology or whatever, you get this kind of disease called expert brain, where you're just sort of thinking in terms of these categories that are not natural categories of thought, not the sort of way that we typically think about our lives and think about the world. And so the biggest hurdle for me in education, just like as a teacher, is to try to sort of get rid of as many of those categories as I can and see if I can still say what I want to say when I'm thinking sort of, with expertise. And if I can, then that tells me both that like I've got a real thought, because a lot of like expertise sort of, just tricks you into thinking you know things. But also I've got something that I can communicate and that might be meaningful for my students.
Yeah. It's so. Do you like write out the scripts for your videos? Do you do a whole lot of planning ahead of time?
For the TikToks, we actually I've got a couple of friends and we collaborate on some of these. And usually what we do is we have a funny idea and we think like, man, we could explain, Peter Singer's argument against meat eating in 60 seconds. And we kind of think about, okay, what's the idea there? And then as long as we've got a funny button at the end, I used to work in improv and we always think about buttons, the kind of the thing you do right at the end that makes the audience feel like ba da ba ba da ba, just like this kind of like feeling at the end. As long as we got that, we just kind of start filming and then, throw different lines in there, different, jokes, and then in editing kind of decide what works and what doesn't.
I did have to put someone. Someone said in the live chat. Where I think I just lost it. But basically the joke was that like you're freezing so much that you actually like look like a statue. You look like one of these old like Greek statues. It's
yeah.
Kind of a funny comment.
If I like stand really still, like sometimes people will just like, yeah, stop. And, yeah, no.
All right, well let's talk about let's switch gears and discuss the topic of this, which is basically just the intersection of social media, kind of where it's going right now, and philosophy and education, and I mean the intersection of social media and critical thinking as well. I mean, when I engage in any kind of like, or if I let me say this, if I attempt to engage in any kind of critical thinking on something like Twitter is particularly horrible, then it's just like it's impossible. It's impossible to have like a good philosophical conversation with someone when you're limited to how many characters is it? 240 or something? It's almost impossible. And you don't have that on Facebook or really on any other platform, so far as I know, but or any of the bigger platforms. I'll say that. However, I mean, well, yeah. So what are your thoughts on like social media? Is it having a kind of negative impact on our ability to think clearly and educate others properly?
Yeah, good. So the question just is social media itself having a negative impact? Is that right? I caught most of that, Cameron.
Yeah.
We're powering through and I love it. So I'd say, I've recently read a lot about this because I'm concerned, as somebody that's going deeper into a platform that is, designed to manipulate attention in certain ways. I am concerned that like I'm participating in something that might be, hurting critical thinking. And so I've done a bunch of reading about this. I read a book called The Shallows, and I think it's by Nicholas Carr. I could be wrong about the author there. But he lays out some, social scientific and neuroscientific arguments about our attention spans and that sort of thing. Nothing that was deeply surprising to me just as a user of social media. When you use social media, you just notice a change in yourself. You say like, it's hard for me to read for a long time. So yeah, I'm aware of the worries that, social media reduces our attention span, that it brings out kind of negative features of ourselves. This is something that, I certainly notice in myself. I post a TikTok and then I just like spend a, like 15 minutes, a good 15 minutes kind of scrolling and checking the likes and all that stuff. On the other hand, I'm more excited by the opportunity that's presented by social media. And I think as an educator, I just see lots of opportunities out there, a lot of platforms that are doing a lot of good, a lot of places where our students, where humans are going and learning a ton. And I like to focus on those areas. So I like to look at, the way in which YouTube channels are really just going deep. You can have an hour and a half long YouTube conversation or video that just goes incredibly deep. And the fact that that's happening on the internet, I mean, that doesn't worry me. That excites me. I think that's great. Even sort of with the caveat that, of course, the internet, can do terrible things to our brains, and certainly is, and we've got to be careful about it.
So personally, I really like YouTube. Part of that is because you can actually just have a conversation with somebody, and you can spend a little bit more time, as much time as you want, talking about some subject. I mean, some people will go an entire day. Some atheist channels are creating some really, really long videos. I mean, we've done our own share of really long videos. You can go kind of as long as you want. But there's a mutual friend of ours, Andrew Moon, and one thing that he's told me that's really kind of stuck with me is that he gets a whole lot more. It's not. I'm sure he would want to make some caveats here, but he gets a whole lot out of actually talking with people who have published papers on certain topics. He gets way more out of actually just sitting down and having a conversation with them, instead of say just like reading all of their papers or all of their work. He can actually like learn someone's view a whole lot quicker and really get a handle on it. Actually, just sitting down and talking with them at these philosophy conferences. And so, I mean, I've never been in that position. I'm not a philosopher. I don't write papers or anything like that. But I do this, and I have conversations with people. So I think that could be a benefit. What are your thoughts on that? On YouTube being a platform where you can actually just talk to people and learn about ideas that way?
Absolutely. I think YouTube is, like, in many ways an ideal form of social media, that it gives people, the space to actually do some thinking, and that you can engage socially in a way that actually mimics the social interactions that we have outside of the internet fairly well.
Mm-hmm.
We're having a conversation. Of course, like, it's different than if we were just sitting down and having coffee and talking, or if we were even sitting on a stage and talking, and people were watching it. There's differences, of course, but I do think that certain social media really do capture that social element in a way that's very helpful. So, I mean, I would agree with Andrew both that, like, talking to a philosopher at a conference does wonders. Like, I barely can read philosophy papers often, because it's just so much technical stuff and it's just all over the place. And what I want to know, like, even to understand the paper, is like, why do you care about this? Why are you writing this? Like, who are you, And so I have a very sort of relational approach to philosophy. And so, the more that you can capture that in a medium, on TikTok or on YouTube or whatever it might be, for me, the better. And it's sort of a lot better than just kind of written word or scanning or whatever it might be.
So those are some of the positives, but let's focus a little bit more on the negatives, as much as we may not like to focus on the negatives, because you and me are kind of in the business of like doing philosophy on these different social media platforms. So negatives with respect to YouTube, what are some of the negatives? So first of all, the comments. In the past, I knew that was like a big reason why I personally didn't want to get on YouTube, was because whenever I would go on someone else's video, whether it was a debate or whether it was some lecture, the comments, if the comments were allowed, were usually just of very, very poor quality. And so I was kind of concerned that the same was going to happen on my videos. And I still get this, I won't even say occasional. I get a lot of nasty comments and just really poor quality in terms of, I mean, from my perspective, the philosophy behind the comments and everything. And so I suppose the reason why I'm bringing that up, the quality of the comments, is because that spills over into different social media platforms. Particularly, I'm thinking here of Facebook. So what I think, a kind of general worry that I have that social media has given us, is this need to be able to just answer everything or provide an objection to everything, even if we're not studied in some particular subject. Some people are talking about, the arguments for intelligent design. You may disagree with the conclusion that they've got, even though you may not know exactly how to object to their view. So instead of like just admitting that you don't really know what to say about this argument, you may go on Google, spend 3 minutes Googling objections to intelligent design, copy paste some of those objections, and then just throw them in the comments. So my worry, I suppose, if I could put this quickly, is that it's promoting a kind of superficiality of research. And so it's promoting this kind of idea that you can just go and do a quick Google search and like find some devastating objection to some view, when in reality you've only put like 30 seconds of critical thinking into this objection. Really, you haven't put any at all. But it's the social media aspect is kind of driving this, because we feel this need to have a response and be able to, there's other psychological things we could talk about, some motivations why people do that. But that's a serious concern that I've got, that social media kind of promotes that, it sort of enhances this negative psychological feature that we, I think, are all sort of prone to.
Yeah, good. So Cameron, I caught most of that, and tell me if I'm not answering. Tell me if I'm not answering your question. But here's the crucial bit I caught from that. Seems like social media can encourage intellectual vice. It can encourage dialogical vice. Just invent a word here. It can encourage bad habits, and one of the bad habits that that you're highlighting here is. It is a problem with comment sections, but I think it's a problem that's a problem not just on social media. It's a problem in the real world too, right? So here's how I see it. When you are engaging in a philosophical conversation, in intellectual debate, dialogue, etc., there's a real vulnerability, right? There's a way in which you're putting yourself out there, you're putting yourself on the line, and that's terrifying. And often we'll do anything that we can not to be vulnerable. And so here's a couple of strategies that are bad strategies. Be really hostile, right? So just like go into a conversation and just start the conversation by looking the person in the eye and be like, you're an idiot because, and you just start out that way. And from there, the conversation is going to be garbage. It's not going to be any good. But you might not find yourself feeling as insecure or as vulnerable or as worried about looking smart or whatever. Another thing that people often will do, and this is something that as a philosopher I know really well because it happens at philosophy conferences constantly, is they'll come in and they'll just start using ideas and concepts and frameworks that other people in the room don't know. Maybe they invented it, or maybe they just read a bunch of stuff. And if you start talking like an expert and you sound like an expert, again, you shut down dialogue. You make yourself invulnerable to this kind of criticism that, again, is just very scary, right? And so I think what happens on the internet is just like what happens in real life. I think people are faced with a challenge to a belief that they have or a view that they have that's a core part of their identity. And that is scary. No matter who you are, no matter how smart you are, that's a scary thing. And so they react by, copying and pasting the smartest sounding thing that they can, or they react, in hostility, just you're so dumb because of this, that, whatever it might be. And so I think the problem here is, of course, comment sections and anonymity make this worse. And this is, something that actually shows up in Plato's Republic, by the way. The Ring of Gyges. You can get on a whole sort of other track about that if you want. But the anonymity is a problem, sure, okay. But the essential problem isn't new. The problem is a problem that we have on the internet and in real life.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about all the different, I like the way that you put it in terms of intellectual vices. Social media can promote intellectual vices, and that's really bad. But when I think about it, I'm thinking, social media is basically just a new way of communication, and it's a whole lot more accessible. So you can talk to anybody. You can have conversations with people you never would have had conversations with in the past. You can raise objections to people that they may never have encountered in their entire lives because they just wouldn't go read the material. Or so in the past, because communication was so limited, there were still bad things that could happen back then. There were some good things that could happen. You had to put some effort and go and read these books and everything, and that's the way that you became informed instead of doing a quick Google search. But so I think the point that I want to make is that there's negatives regardless of what kind of system we have in place in terms of our ability to communicate socially as a species. So maybe social media, as long as we can become aware of these intellectual vices and try to combat them, then maybe that's the best way forward, because we're going to face vices, we're going to face sort of bad states of affairs regardless of what system we have in place. Statue Paul, are you there?
Say that last part again, Cameron. You said what's the best way forward? Because I got the vice versus virtue.
Yeah, the best way forward is to acknowledge the potential vices and the potential bad states of affairs, and then to just try to mitigate those as best as possible.
I think that's right. I think I mean, I'd even go a step further though, right? Okay. So we know there are bad things about social media. We know that there are ways in which platforms are designed, say, to encourage vice, right? So this is a boring example, but like, a social media platform might have strong incentives to keep you on platform as long as possible. And so they'll do anything to just trick your brain into like wanting the dopamine that comes with like seeing a like or seeing a comment, whatever. Okay. So there are vices, there are bad things. Now, one strategy, and the one that I think you were saying a second ago, kind of outlining, is, well, let's try to mitigate all those bad things, and let's try to, then strip away as many of the bad things as we can, and then just like try to approach the thing that social media is imitating, which is maybe good one-on-one philosophical conversation. And the thing I would want to push here is maybe the best case scenario is not just that we're back to like the, one-on-one philosophical conversation. Maybe there are educational opportunities. Maybe there are things that social media makes possible in philosophical dialogue, exchanges, etc., that actually that go beyond like what we can do in person. Like, I'm not saying we shouldn't meet in person and talk. I think that's great, and I prefer that vastly to Zooming all day, which is what I do right now with my life. But I do think there are ways in which, having nested comments and being able to bring in an expert, or, really quickly access information, or think before you have to post something instead of like thinking on your feet and responding, et cetera. I think there are actually like intellectual virtues that some of these social media platforms can make room for as well.
Yeah. So I think that there's benefits no matter what system you've got in place. If you don't have the internet and, we were stuck to just writing or meeting with people, then there's certain things that, there's benefits to that situation. There's also drawbacks, but then I think on both sides, you're dealing with it either way. And so you've got to just, I think, locate the different positives and negatives, and then try to emphasize the positives, which I think the negatives often are sort of brought about by just our, psychology, just human nature is just bad in a lot of ways. And so we just sort of gravitate toward being nasty, being just sort of flippant, superficial in our research and all that. So, but I wanted to talk about some other things as well. As apart from just like critical thinking, can social media have negative consequences in other areas besides just critical thinking or education? Can it affect our character? Are there sort of moral concerns that we've got to worry about when it comes to social media? Another one is levels of anxiety. I know that when I would deal with people in the past, my anxiety would just like start to bubble up and bubble up when these conversations would get longer and longer, or I'd say something that I wasn't super sure about, and the response back to me was a little bit more forceful than I was expecting. And so, situations like this can increase our anxiety. And so are there other sort of potential negatives that social media is having in different areas of our life other than education or critical thinking?
My worst nightmare, Cameron, is that you're going to ask questions and I'm just going to answer totally other questions because like they're coming through 65%, which is on my end. This is technical problems on my end. Tell me if this isn't the question you asked. Sorry to keep doing this. But one thing I heard is you said, using social media can tap into deep anxiety. And it can really bring out sort of anxiety about, posting things, replying to different comments, kind of the vulnerability that we were talking about a second ago. that again is a very natural vulnerability when you're opening yourself up philosophically to another person and saying, hey, here's what I believe. And that other person can take that belief and they can go in different directions. They can say like, well, here's more evidence, or I'm smarter than you, or whatever else. Okay, so
Yeah,
if we're thinking about potential antidotes to that anxiety, so let me know if I'm getting warm here. If we're thinking about potential antidotes to that,
that's what I asked.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Good. So let me give you a couple of things that I've been trying to do lately and thinking a lot about lately. And these all come directly from Marcus Aurelius. So Marcus Aurelius, I know you're familiar with him. I'll just say, for anybody watching who hasn't sort of read up on Stoicism, Marcus Aurelius is a Roman emperor. He's a Stoic. One of the really fascinating things about Marcus is that he was leading campaigns all over, the empire. He was like, engaged in battle constantly. And he kept a journal while he was doing this. But in the journal, you don't find the kind of things that you might expect a Roman emperor to be journaling about. So like if I was a Roman emperor, I would be like, dear diary, conquered another nation today. Like, just got a bunch of gold, Instead, the whole thing, the meditations, is just filled with notes to self. And all of the notes have Stoic themes, right? And Stoicism tries to remind us that the things that really matter, the things that are really important, are things that are internal, right? Things like virtue, things like the state of your soul, and that these things are not things that externalities can take away, right? And so a really common sort of Stoic meditation, a really common note for Marcus to have written to himself is something like this, reflect on the fact that after you die, no one is going to talk about you anymore. Maybe they will for like 10 years. Maybe they will for like, 20 years if you're lucky. But eventually you will turn to dust. Your name will be forgotten and everything will move on like it did before you were born. And okay, that's kind of harsh. That's intense. That's not quite the worldview that I inhabit. But I do find that engaging in this kind of, what we would call detachment can be really helpful, right? Really quick example. TikTok went down the other day, and it didn't go down for, very long. It was down for like 24 hours or something. But while it was going down and kind of back up, it was really buggy. And everybody was losing all of their likes and their views, right? So your video count, it's got the little like view thing in the corner of it. And for whatever reason, I've become very attached. I mean, not for whatever reason, this is exactly how it's designed, become very attached to the number of views that I have, right? And so when my views went from like 41,000 to 0, I noticed in myself this deep sadness or this deep sort of like loss. And I had to go back to my own kind of Stoic meditations and say, why are you doing this? You're doing this to connect to people, to talk to people, to teach philosophy or to engage in philosophy. It's not about the thing, it's not about this numerical, sort of indicator of something or other. And so to practice that detachment and to do that on a daily basis, because, I know that this is the sort of thing that I very easily lose sight of. For me, that really helps, right? That really helps sort of distance myself from the kind of day-to-day flux of just like, gotta get those likes, gotta get those comments, whatever it might be. So I don't know. I don't know if you've tried there, if anything in there sounds helpful, but that's one strategy one could employ.
Yeah. I mean, I don't really have a whole lot to add to that other than like in the past, I was really driven by views and I was really driven. Well, actually, I don't know if that's true, but there is this tendency to like want to have more views on a video and frame your titles and your thumbnails in a certain way that's going to be super provocative. So yeah, there is definitely that pull, and it is very helpful to remember sort of what it's about, especially from a Christian perspective. It's not about numbers at all. Although numbers are sort of indicator of something good, but the ultimate goal is to sort of benefit the kingdom. So if you sort of remind yourself of what it's really about, I think that is that's really important to do. But returning to this idea of anxiety. So first of all, let me ask if you're with me so far.
I heard I heard some of that.
I heard some words in there.
I heard some words. Here's what I heard, Cameron. Tell me if this is right. So I heard you say.
I just agreed.
Yeah. So.
I just basically agreed. Yeah. This is the most awkward conversation I've ever had. So I basically just agreed with what you just said.
Oh gosh. I just heard you say, I just said, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh, this is fun. Okay. Let me just ask this next question. So the next question is, or I kind of want to return to this idea of anxiety and how social media is sort of making anxiety worse for a lot of people. I don't know if you personally experience anxiety, but I do. I even am on some different medications for it. Although I'm not like on medications, I'm sort of trying different things to see what helps. I've changed diets. I've started exercising more. And so I'm just trying a lot of different things to sort of get my anxiety back under control. So I in talking with another philosopher, he's talked about some of the negatives of social media and how social media can make your anxiety worse in a lot of ways. And there's even a guy, a really famous YouTuber, David Wood from Acts 17 Apologetics. And he basically went on a hiatus for about, I think it was like 2 or 3 months. He was dealing with caring for his sons that are special needs. But he was completely off of social media. And he noted in a video that he created later that it was just a great, like an awesome couple months away. And he just felt so much better after doing it because he basically took this long hiatus from social media. And I worry that social media is just having... and he's completely gone. Well, then I can just talk to the audience because I don't know how much of that he was able to hear anyways. And this is kind of a rant or a tangent I was going on anyway. So I'll just finish the point. I'll wait for Paul to get back. And then we'll see what we can do. I mean, if worse comes to worse, we'll just maybe take some questions. But I think, all right, Paul's calling back here. Let's try to get him back in. I didn't lose my point, so I'll get back to it in a second. All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, and you're coming through clear.
Okay. There's a little bit of a lag, but I think we can work through it. So give me another test real quick. Let me know. Just say something.
Okay. Test. I'm testing right now.
Perfect. All right. Got it. All right. I'm going to repeat my question, and hopefully this, I think you switched to your desktop or your computer or something. Hopefully this is going to be a little bit clearer. All right, let me repeat my question. So turning back to the question of social media and anxiety. So I think that social media can make our anxiety worse for a couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that like in the past, when we were talking with someone about some view that we held deeply, like it was on a very rare occasion. Because most of like, who are you spending time with? You're spending time with your colleagues. You're spending time with your family, or occasionally you'd go out with your friends. But it's very rare that you'd have these sort of deep conversations about really meaningful topics. And so, but on social media, it's like every day you have that opportunity to go and talk with people that disagree with you. And a lot of times, it's not always the best conversation that you have with someone. I think that another philosopher that I interviewed a little bit while back, his name is Douglas Groothuis, he was saying how when you have a serious conversation with somebody, maybe what you need to do instead of having it on Facebook in the comments is like just load up Skype or Zoom and have a face-to-face kind of conversation with them. That may be is probably, in a lot of ways, a better way to go about it because it makes it personal and stuff. But anyways, the point that I want to make is that social media, I think that if you don't keep that in mind and you don't realize how it's affecting you, that could be one of the biggest triggers that you've got for your anxiety, apart from the whole critical thinking aspect and how it's sort of promoting these intellectual vices. I think that it can have these other sort of negative effects. Did that come clear?
That was so clear, Cameron. It's like I just woke up and here we are. Yes. So look, I think this is brilliant and I have a lot of thoughts here.
Well, so
One
let me say
is,
this
yeah, go ahead.
while you're thinking, I got this. The original person who put this in my mind was Thomas Bogardus. Do you know him?
I know of him. I've never met,
Okay.
but I know of him.
So good. He's been on my channel a couple times. But yeah, he was talking about this and how social media is sort of it's created like in millennials, it's created like the most anxiety, wrecked generation.
Mm, absolutely. So yeah, I think there's two separate thoughts that I'm going to try to develop really quickly, and then we can go either direction. One set of thoughts is, look, there are just all kinds of things about social media that are going to either trigger anxiety or bring it out in us. So, we talked earlier about the anonymity of social media. Here's another thing about social media that I think brings out an unhelpful part of our soul or psyche, and that is everything's ranked, right? Everything that you do, you put up, and then there's views, and then you think like, oh, are there a lot of views? Are there more views than other people? Do people like this? And it changes your behavior. You start thinking in a performative way rather than
Hmm.
in a personal way, right? I'm not sort of telling people, hey, look, I'm not going up to somebody that I know and saying, look at this picture of my kid. Aren't they beautiful? I love this. We have this relationship. I'm saying to the world, like, my kid's the best kid. Like this kid. You know what I mean? It's weird. That's weird. Another thing, though, and this is something that you touched on early in the question, is there's definitely such a thing as too much of a good thing. This
Hmm.
phrase that people use, and I think deep, intimate philosophical conversations are like really rich foods, and if you just engage in this kind of conversation, in this kind of mode all day, every day, you're just going to start getting sick, right? Because you're so emotionally invested in it. You're always coming to it with this kind of vulnerability, but this hope, this sort of like desire to connect to somebody. And nobody can sort of have that much high quality philosophical conversation just 24 hours a day, right? And so I think that's another way in which social media, even when it's used really well for good purposes, can kind of get inside our head and just, cause us to lose track of the balance of everyday life or the things that really matter, the good things that, you really want to build your life around and not lose sight of. And that's something, I think anybody who's creating content or anybody who's doing even just posting, consistently on, say, Instagram or Facebook or whatever, it's something I think we all struggle with.
Hmm. So, what sort of, as I was looking through your TikTok, you had some videos that are, not as well viewed, and then you have some that are like hundreds of thousands of views, and
Yeah.
those topics tend to be the more sort of generic or really deep hitting questions like, is there a God? I think one of your videos that was like 140,000 views that I was looking at was about God's existence or something. And
Hmm.
so is that it? Does that shape your desire to create new content? Or are you like, this video got a whole lot of views, maybe I should make another video on this subject too?
Yeah, this is a live question. I feel lucky. I'm right at the beginning of this, right? And I'm just running experiments with social media every day. And my strategy so far has been to do stuff that I think is meaningful and deeply funny. Like my goal is to just make myself laugh. And if I have a video that I think is not going to get a lot of views, but that will be funny to me, I will post it and I will just love it. And that's the one I'll watch like over and over and just chuckle in bed, just think about. Now,
So who
obviously, oh, go
one of
ahead.
these videos, yeah, one of these videos I wanted to talk about in particular was it was on the ontological argument. Was that a
Yeah.
student of yours, or was that just some that was a student?
Yeah, yeah, good. Yeah, that was my student Kat, who's actually helping work on a bunch of media stuff over the summer. Yeah, yeah. So that was a student. Yeah.
Nice. Whose idea was that video?
Gosh, it's so funny. We've got such a collaborative process going on at this point. It's hard to say. Like so what we'll do is, we'll be working on a bunch of different media. we'll sit in a room, well, in a Zoom, really, honestly, and we'll kind of have a list of different things that each of us wants to pitch, and we'll say like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if like we wrote out the whole like Alvin Plantinga's whole ontological argument,
Mm-hmm.
just 33 premises, and then somebody will be like, oh yeah, that'd be great, but like, what if you kept having to use a bigger whiteboard? And it'll be, so in a way, it's like fulfilling this like dream that I've always had of like what I envision the SNL writers room to be. I've just like created this kind of like version of it, and we'll go back and forth and talk about these things. But one thing that I think is maybe more related to the core of your question is the real deep content for me always comes from what my students are interested in, and this is true for my teaching certainly, and also for any media that I'm creating. I constantly go to them and I say like, a lot of philosophers really care about the problem of evil, but do you like, does that make any difference to you? Does it keep you up at night? And I'll get really candid, really specific answers. They'll say like, that deeply matters to me, but this version strikes me as plausible. This one doesn't. Or they'll say, yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think a lot of people worry about that. A lot of people worry about this other thing. And so just, as an educator, my goals are to make sure that I'm doing stuff that's relevant. I'm teaching stuff that's relevant to them. And so I'm constantly going to my students and just saying, look, like what do you care about? Like, what do you want to know about? What kind of philosophy do you want to do together? So yeah, so that's baked into the process for sure.
Paul, I have to say something. I'm so happy with the connection. Like, I kind of want to just start the whole interview over. I'm not going to, but it's so much
the
better.
Same way. Yes, I know. It's like we actually met 40 minutes into this.
So what I want to do actually is, I should have asked this at the beginning, but I'm sort of glad that I didn't, because that way we can just talk about it. So what are some like, the only way that I introduced you was a TikTok philosopher, but like, tell me more about your worldview and how you came to it and why you're interested in these subjects in the first place.
Oh my gosh. All right. So this is a dangerous question for an academic, for anybody really, but like an academic with egos as big as ours, right? We're like, well, I was born in 1988. I won't start that far back, but I'll start here. On the playground, and I remember, I remember this. Sorry, I did start almost at birth. On the playground, I remember arguing with a Lutheran neighbor. I'm from Minnesota, so there's two kinds of Christian. There's Catholics and Lutherans. There's obviously more than that, but like, this is like the two main flavors. And I remember arguing with a kid on the playground about transubstantiation, and he brought it up, and he was like, "You guys believe that like communion is the body of Christ?" And I was like, I guess we do, and it must be true then. And then like I went home and I was like, mom, like what are we doing here? And okay, so that started me on this kind of apologetics journey that went all the way through high school, and is really what is at the core of my interest in philosophy. Because, when you get into this world of giving reasons for your views and seeing that they're defensible, but also seeing like there's this whole intellectual landscape. There's this, I like to call it the space of reason. And I stole this term from a philosopher at the University of Pittsburgh, and it means nothing like what he meant by it. But I like to call it space of reason, this whole sort of landscape where there are ideas and you can use your mind to explore that landscape. And sometimes you just get a kind of interesting, funny bit of knowledge. It's like, oh, that was weird. I didn't know that there could be bigger infinities. Like, that's funny. It's like you're walking through the landscape and you see an animal with two tails and you're like, it's goofy. But sometimes you hit on a truth that just like cuts to your core and you think like, I must change my life. I need to do something differently. And to me, that is just so exciting, like to be in that spot, to be in that place, that I just immediately knew, like going into college, like I have to keep doing that forever. My whole life, I want to keep doing that. And so immediately started, taking philosophy classes, got into it. Actually went into the seminary at one point because I was like, maybe I should be a priest. And like anybody who knows me is like, they're like, no, you do other things in the church. That's fine. So then I left the seminary, but still just had it at my core, like philosophy has got to be part of my life for the rest of my life. Discovered how much fun it is to teach philosophy and how exciting that landscape is, how exciting it is to like walk through the landscape again, start at the beginning, but with other people. And you're like, yeah, no, like there's the two-tailed thing. And like, here's the thing that I found to be this deeply resonant truth, whatever. That's okay. That's where I'm coming from. That was pretty general and very metaphorical, but I don't know.
Yeah. Well, the main takeaway is that you're a Christian and you're still doing philosophy and you love it.
Oh yeah, there we go. There's the bottom line. Yeah, no, no, I'm Catholic. I'm Catholic. I love it. Yeah, I love being Catholic. Sorry, I don't know if we can talk about that, but I love being Catholic for a lot of reasons. But yeah, one of my favorite things, to do is to just from inside that worldview, just to engage with every kind of philosophy that comes up, any kind of idea, anything that anybody is bringing up and saying, like, you guys, this is super important, even if it's really outside my worldview. I just love, being inside the worldview and just thinking like, yeah, let's think about that. Let's go there.
Yeah. No, I've been having more and more conversations with Catholics on different topics. Are you familiar with Matt Fradd?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know.
Yeah,
I mean, I
Pints
don't
with
know
Aquinas.
no, but
Right,
yeah,
right. Well, we've been having conversations and even debates on different topics. So I'm actively looking into Catholicism myself. It's been an awesome journey so far.
great.
So
Two thumbs up. I don't know how to. Two thumbs up is what I would say.
I want to do this. I want to open it up to some Q&A from the audience. Are you comfortable with that?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Let's do it. So if you have a question for Dr. Blashko, did I get that right?
Two
Nice.
thumbs up again.
Dr. Blashko, if you have a question for him, anything related to social media, education, critical thinking, we could even talk about the overlap of social media and anxiety if you want. But try to stay along those topics, or if you've got something else from his videos if you've seen his videos and you want to ask him a question about those, feel free to ask those. And you've been seeing some little graphics that have been going across the screen. Like, subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. So do that as well while you're thinking about asking a question. We did get a super chat from Maverick Christian. Let me go ahead and put this on the screen. I don't know why it looks like that, but we're just going to roll with it. Let me put it over here on your black shirt. There we go, so people can read
Love it.
All right. He says, hello, fellow person from Minnesota.
Hello, or as we say in Minnesota, hey there.
Nice. All right. Well, yeah. So, okay. Sorry, we did just get a question, and I think it's related to your TikTok. So let me put this on the screen from MP Real. How many people are you going to cause to stumble by putting your theology/philosophy videos on TikTok?
Man, hard hitting.
I think it might be because of your beard.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to quite interpret the question. Let's go through a couple of different potential interpretations.
Oh, okay. No. Here, they have a follow-up. And
Okay.
so here, he says, watch a video on theology, move on to a young girl twerking.
Oh yeah, no. Hey, look, I totally get this. I have described TikTok as like the social media equivalent of a dumpster fire. I mean, I don't know. I hope TikTok's not watching. I love the platform.
they are.
I think there's a lot of good things, a lot of interesting things about it. And certainly, like, I don't honestly consume a ton of TikTok. I like follow a couple of educators, and I like go to this part, and I like to watch what they're putting out there. But here's the thing: I don't know that I would recommend that anybody like go to TikTok and download the app and like start watching a bunch of videos. One of the reasons I started on TikTok is I actually wanted to engage with people in longer form conversations. And so I actually want to engage with people on YouTube. I want to engage with people through this newsletter that I write. I actually want to like spend some time like doing longer form stuff. But one of the thoughts that I had, and this is something, I don't know, I'm new to TikTok. I'm still figuring this out. It's still an experiment. One of the thoughts that I had is okay, the Jesuits of old, right? 16th, 17th, 18th century, as soon as there was like a new frontier in the world, as soon as there was a new culture that we thought like, hey, we didn't know there was that culture before, or maybe we did, but like we never had engaged that culture or anything like that. We're going to go there and we're just going to see what happens. And we're going to try to take people as seriously on their own terms as we possibly can. And then and see what happens and see if, I mean, they're Jesuits. And so, of course, they're constantly discerning the spirit, see if like this is where the spirit is leading us or not, or, if it's useful or not, et cetera. This is very much how I see, this foray into TikTok. I think of it as a culture, as a place that people are learning and thinking and, doing a lot of just the kind of stuff that we're doing in everyday life, thinking through different issues. Of course, they're doing a lot of things. They're looking for entertainment. They're looking for a lot of things. But it is a live question. I mean, it is something that I think about. And if my kid, who's now only 4, but say he was like 10, if he came to me, he's like, I want to get a TikTok. I think I'd be like, what if I get you a new baseball mitt, buddy? Like, I don't know.
All right, from Nolan Whittaker. Let me put this on the screen so people can see. Yeah, I'm still using your black shirt here. Should philosophy graduate students partake in Twitter? Seems like a net loss to me, but I'm open to being wrong.
Good question. Gosh. I have so much advice for philosophy graduate students, and none of it is useful. None of it, I don't know. Here's what I will say. Here's what I'll say. I think philosophy grad students, like many people, but especially philosophy grad students, anybody who's interested in educating should do a bunch of experiments. They should be trying out media all the time, trying to figure out how they can reach people, how they can, connect with different time constraints, that kind of thing, different character limits, whatever. I think people should be doing those kinds of experiments all the time. But I think you should have clear goals going in. And so if your goal is, to reach a certain population, number of people or something like that, okay, that's one kind of goal you could have. Another one might be like, I want to get connected to the conversations that people in the profession are having at the cutting edge. Okay, that's another kind of goal. Assess, like every couple of weeks, am I actually using this in a way that's consistent with the goal? Am I achieving the goal by using this? Or is this a distraction, or worse? And then do whatever makes sense, like given, the answer to that question. I was on Twitter for a while, and eventually, because like it's so saturated and there's so much philosophy on Twitter and great philosophy on Twitter, but I don't particularly find the format helpful. I can't like follow all these threads, and it's so confusing to me. I just found myself like mindlessly scrolling. And so at that point I was just like, I'm not going to really spend any time on this. And I probably spend like a minute a week on Twitter, and I just open it, and like none of my stuff has been liked, and it makes me sad. I'm just like, all right, just like close it, and hang my head in shame. But so I, just have a goal and know what your goal is, and ask yourself every so often, is this serving my goal? But in terms of, putting yourself out there, trying experiments, things like that served me super well as a philosophy grad student, just led to a bunch of different opportunities. And so, as long as you're not writing your dissertation because of it, it's a way to spend some time.
So here's a really, really good question from Roger Sharp. What is the best razor for beards?
If you find out the answer to this, Roger, I want to know, because as you can see, I've not used a razor on my beard almost ever. I've just started growing this during the pandemic. And the advice I got was to actually get really cheap disposable razors and like use it to get rid of all like the fringe on the sides and stuff like that. And I'm not even like doing that consistently. So I don't know, man. I'm still experimenting with that.
So you need help there.
I need help, but maybe this is like maybe he's a plant because his name's Roger Sharp. So maybe he's like, answer sharp razors. I don't know.
No, I actually know Roger. He's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So AAA, how to mitigate, hinder the negative effects of social media, i.e. examples you've tried, steps. And I'll actually answer this one, and then I'll let you, any that you've got as well. So what I did to help like lessen the amount of time that I was spending on social media, I actually, the apps that I have, because I use an iPhone. So the apps that I have on the very bottom row, they used to all be social media. So those have all been moved. So basically, if I want to open up social media on my phone, I just made it harder for myself. I turned off all notifications, so I don't get any notifications on anything when anyone sends me a message or different comments or anything. So the notifications that I get are the only notifications when I actually open up the app itself. So taking those off of my phone, taking them off of my watch so that I don't get any notifications from social media is one way that it's helped me stay off of social media as well. So like I only enter when I'm in the right brain space, or like I'm in the, I've sort of put these walls and these defenses up so that I can enter with the right mind. So that's something to maybe try out, is to just turn off your notifications. I know that with Twitter, you can actually really narrow in on what kind of notifications, even when you open the app, what kind of notifications you receive. So you can, like, I basically have all notifications turned off. That's why a lot of people just think that I ignore them, and I kind of am ignoring them, but I just have notifications turned off. So if I want to like respond to someone who's responded to me, something I've said, I actually have to like look through the thread and see who's said anything. And then if it's worth responding to, I may respond. So that's one of the ways that I've sort of mitigated some of those, at least when it comes to like anxiety and stuff. But yeah, so what are your thoughts?
Those are great strategies. Let me know if I'm laggier than usual. It looks like it to me, but maybe I'm not.
Yeah, it does.
I love all those strategies. I love all those strategies and have used them myself. I'll give two additional ones that I've tried. One is scheduling social media time. And
Mm,
so, um, given that I have very specific goals with respect to my social media, it's fairly easy for me to kind of determine like how much time should I be spending on this each week. And given that I don't want to take that time from my family, I'll take it from work time, like during the day at the office. I'll actually literally put on my Google Calendar 30 minutes for TikTok comments because I just think like this is my time to like engage a bunch of people, answer a bunch of questions, and then I'm done, and then it's over. And then once I close the app, the notifications aren't constantly popping up, and because I've also turned off the notifications. So that's been really helpful. I think the only other thing that I'd mention is yeah, so I do this thing every now and then, this app called Noom, Noom, the weight loss app.
oh no,
One of
I'm
the
not familiar with
things
that.
that Noom, oh yeah, it's just this thing where you're just like counting calories and like they actually have this whole psychological approach. It's actually pretty cool. It's a pretty cool sort of educational model that they've got. Anyway, but as I'm going through this, right, like one of the things that they'll talk about, that a lot of people will talk about if you're trying to implement any kind of behavioral change, is just trying to be more mindful and intentional about what you're doing. And so, one question it asks is like, yeah, like if you're standing in front of the fridge, like for 20 minutes, just looking at it, like, what are you going to do? You're just going to like sit there and eat. But if you think like, I'm just going to be really intentional about like, what am I doing? I'm getting up from the couch. Like, do I want to go read a book? Do I want to go to the fridge? What do I want to do? I find that's really helpful as well. Just kind of stopping and taking a minute to really reflect, really think like, what is the purpose of the activity I'm engaged in?
Yeah, that's really good advice as well. Okay, so here's a sort of general or question from Juan. He says, "What is your favorite thing about Catholicism?"
Oh my gosh. Favorite thing about Catholicism? I mean, other than like, like transubstantiation and stuff. You mean like I love the real presence. I love the sacraments. I don't know how much like this is helpful, but yeah, man, just the sacraments, like the way that that's baked into the worldview, I think is really helpful practically. Just going to confession and just like
Mm,
having that be part of your life, and sort of the way that I experience it, sort of from the first person point of view, like all of that's just like wonderful. I'd say one other thing that I love about it um, is that it. Let me think how to put this, and I want to put this carefully because I think having not ever been anything but a Catholic, I don't know how distinctive this is to the Catholic worldview. Uh, but there is a sense that Catholicism just has people doing everything, right? There are people that just professionally sit around and think their entire life about every argument that could possibly come up against the existence of God, and then they answer all those arguments. And I don't want to have to do that personally. Like, I don't want to just
mm,
do that my whole life. I want to explore those. I want to like read. I want to engage with them. I want to talk to them. But I don't want to have to do that all the time. Like, I don't think that's what I'm called to. On the other hand, there's people that just their whole life is devoted to figuring out who in our community needs something and how can we as a community help that person do something. And their whole life is devoted to this. And there might be very little overlap between the kinds of things that each of these people do. Uh, but they belong to this tradition. They belong to this institution that is organized in this particular way. And I love that about Catholicism. I love that about Christianity. I love this about other traditions, I guess, that I would be a part of. But Catholicism in particular, I mean, that's I'd say my favorite part.
Here's something related to Catholicism. I wonder him being a Catholic if he thinks that there's bad teachings there. I wonder if he's just talking about
In
any kind of, I guess, yeah.
yeah, yeah. In Catholicism, oh, certainly. uh, and I guess the question I would have to like, very carefully distinguish. One question is like, are there any false doctrines or something like that? I'm going to say no. We're trained at a very early age to be like, no, 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 none of those here, none of those, which is true. And if
Because
you
if you
look
reject
at the
those, then you can
argument
just
for them,
no longer be Catholic.
yeah, sure, sure, sure. Although, again, it gets very tricky. And I know I watched the Robert Barron interview that you did, or one of them, I guess.
Hmm.
And I think he does a phenomenal job of laying out the nuances here. But right, so in terms of like official church teaching that's got an official magisterial status or something like that, no, there's nothing like that I've ever come across that I thought like, yeah, geez, like this seems wrong, this seems false. On the other hand, like there's a lot of Catholics, just a lot of us Catholics, a lot of humans, like we tend to get confused and we tend to say dumb things. Like I say dumb things all the time on the internet and in person and elsewhere. And so, of course, there's just going to be, bad arguments out there. There's going to be bad ways of expressing what we believe or how that relates to Catholic doctrine or dogma or whatever. There's a lot of confused people out there. There's a lot of confused Catholics out there. And I think, the best thing that we can do is just keep trying and keep dialoguing and make sure that, if we think somebody's confused or if we think we might be confused, just to, be really careful and sort of challenge ourselves on that. So, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's get through. I've got 4 questions, and we'll try to get through these really quickly, and then we'll close it out today. So this one, a little bit on the lighter side as well, from Valid Core. What is your main in Smash? So Smash, he's referring to a video game that I've announced that I play on my channel. It's called Super Smash Brothers Ultimate, and so I don't know if you play that. There's a very low chance that you do, but it's a game that I play in my free time, and currently I'm maining Luigi. So I kind of go like all over the place. There's a bunch of different characters that I'll try to get or sort of like have a mini mastery of, and Luigi is the one that I'm currently using right now, and I've almost got him in Elite Smash. So there you go. Do you have any comments?
That's awesome. I do not understand the words that you're saying, but I do know a little bit about Mario and this kind of thing. And I know like whenever I would play say Mario Kart, I would always do the little mushroom guy. That's as much as I got to contribute here.
No worries, no worries. Yeah, Valid Core. That what that shows. Valid Core is the guy who just asked that question. He's very close watcher of the show, so he's very devoted to the channel. So thanks.
Cool.
All right, Nolan Whittaker. Question, Paul. What's your other advice for philosophy graduate students?
Oh gosh, get really good at teaching, and figure out whether you like teaching or not, because the most interesting part of philosophy for me has been teaching, and the biggest part of almost any philosophy job you'll ever get is teaching. And I think the most transferable skills that you can get in grad school is education skills. And so, if you end up being a professional philosopher, it's going to serve you well. If you don't, it's going to serve you well. A lot of the other skills you get, like the really hyper analytic paper writing skills, not super transferable, valuable in their own right. But I think with education, with teaching, there's just always something valuable there.
All right, but we can still hear you. So let's get to these last 2 questions, and we'll try to close it out. From Zhang Fukushang, what has philosophy achieved in the last 4,000 years? I don't know if this is trying to be cheeky or what.
Gosh, no, I love it. I mean, it certainly doesn't even see itself in competition with other kinds of intellectual disciplines or traditions, right? In certain ways. And so the, one thing that scientists will sometimes say in a cheeky way to me is like, look, what's philosophy given us? We gave you like vaccines, like cars. And, I'm like, yeah, thanks for those things. But for philosophy, for me, the core of philosophy is this ongoing, almost therapeutic way of reflecting on our lives becoming more human, engaging the rational side of our soul, connecting with other people, organizing culture and society. It's more of a training. I mean, I like to compare philosophy to like physical fitness. Like I go to the gym all the time, not because I just want to bench 250 pounds. That'd be great. I don't know. And that's one thing I could achieve or accomplish, but because I want to be fit, I want to sort of have a certain level of well-being or flourishing. And I think on the individual level, on the cultural level, on the societal level, this is what philosophy gives us. It gives us this space of reflection. It gives us this way of connecting to each other and engaging from a rational, reasonable point of view. So I think it's been doing that for the last 4,000 years. I think 4,000 more years and beyond.
I'll say this. So Josh Rasmussen was actually working on a list of different advancements that have happened in philosophy. I don't know what's come of that list. I know that he was actually working on putting it together and he had a bunch of different things, but maybe I can follow up with him and see if he's posted it anywhere or if he's still working on it. He's got like 1,000 different things that he's working on in general. So, but I'm sure that there's lists like that out there.
He's a busy guy.
Look up. Super busy, but also amazing. All right, last question, and very, very relevant to the topic today. It's a great question to end on. According to you, how will social media impact the younger generation?
Gosh, I don't know, man. I'm so invested in this question because I have members of the younger generation that are part of my family. I have kids. I don't know why I said it like that, but kids. And it is, worrying. It is, we've got to figure out some of the negative impacts that you were talking about earlier. And
everything is so new.
We've got to lean in. Mm-hmm.
Everything is so new when it comes to social media. It's like, you don't know. I mean, that's one of the things I worry about with my kids is that, like, giving them screen time or however long they are spending watching TV or watching a phone or something like that. It's like I don't think that we really understand or appreciate the sort of long-term impacts that screen time is going to have on someone. It could have really negative impacts when they're a whole lot older. And in the same way, social media, if you like grow up in that environment, I don't know, there could be some really bad negative side effects from, long-term side effects that can really just like completely change your brain makeup and the different grooves that happen in your brain when you learn something. I don't know. It is scary. I mean, I've got kids as well. I've got a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think one thing I'll add, though, is I think technology has always been this way. I think like we've always been engaging with the world in ways that are potentially dangerous and potentially fruitful. And we've always had this challenge of how to incorporate these technologies into our life in helpful ways. I do think some of the stuff with social media and technology is like, digital technology, et cetera, is super scary. It's just terrifying. But I don't know. I'm also optimistic because, we're so resilient, like as, just human beings, that, I also have sort of this optimism, this hope that we're gonna figure it out, yeah.
That's good. I think that's good to be optimistic about it as well. So yeah. All right, man. Well, it was great to finally meet you halfway through the interview.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. This technology, talk about technology, man.
I know.
It's just, yeah.
And then just like randomly at the end, everything is super grainy and stuff. Yeah. It is what it is.
I'm like, yeah, just zooming in from a mountain somewhere. I don't know.
I don't know what's happening. But yeah, no, this was a great conversation, and I know that we had talked about doing a couple different topics, and this is the one that we settled on. But I'm definitely open to having you come on to talk about some particular argument or something that you've put a lot of thought in yourself, or some paper that you've written. I would love to have you back on. I really enjoyed the conversation, and yeah, so I've already. I was gonna say that I've got your links and everything that you've got, including like a blog post that you that you wrote about social media and education. So I've got a lot of links in the description of this video. You guys are interested in learning more about Dr. Blaschko, then just go look in the description of the video and find out more. But is there anything you'd like to leave with the audience before we close it out?
No, just thank you so much. And thank you for your patience. And thank you, audience, for your patience. And I can't wait to have another conversation with you after I've got all this camera stuff figured out.
Awesome. Well, yeah, that's one of the things that I love helping out with regardless. So I can, you and me can talk in the meantime between this and the next stream. So yeah, but thanks again for coming on.
All right. Thank you.
Just as his screen froze there. All right. Well, let me just address the audience real quick. If you guys get value out of the content that I produce, go head over to our Patreon, patreon.com/capturingchristianity to support us. I know that I've got an outro video that will basically say the same thing, but it's different when I can just tell you right here. So again, if you see value, go check out our Patreon and support us that way. This is completely 100% crowdfunded ministry. Got a ton of different things going on. And yeah, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Hey, it's me again. Actually, don't leave yet. I've got something super, super important to tell you. So first of all, you're awesome. Like you just watched a really, really long video just now, and you're still watching it. That is actually pretty amazing. Secondly, we have hundreds, literally hundreds of other apologetics related videos for you to watch on our channel. Go check them out. I've interviewed exorcists, hosted debates between Christians and atheists. I've even made response videos to atheists. All of that is available on our channel. Go check it out. Third, I rely on people that see value in my work, people like you that watch videos to the very end, to keep the lights on around here. Literally, this is how I feed my family. So if you see value in the work that I do, please consider supporting this ministry and becoming a patron. Links to that are in the description. Oh, and have I mentioned that Christianity is true?